Hello Internet, Seth Skorkowski, and today we'll be taking a look at the tabletop role-playing game Righteous Blood, Ruthless Blades. Written by Brendan Davis and Jeremy Bai, the game was published in 2020 by Osprey Games. The rulebook is pretty small, it's only 270 pages of this kind of small 9x6 hardback, which does include a sample adventure. Now, for the sake of full disclosure, I was sent this copy by Jeremy Bai, one of the authors and a fan who left me a nice little message inside, and he had said how my game reviews had been very instrumental in crafting this game as far as some of the rules mechanics they had used, but this is going to be a fair and honest review based off my own personal experiences running and playing this game.
Hey, and I'm Jack the NPC, martial arts master and feared drunk. Wait, no, that is the other way around. Drunken master and feared martial artist. I'm here to give it to you from a player's side of things as we slice and kick our way through the ancient China that never was.
Righteous Blood's Ruthless Blades is a gritty and dark wuxia role-playing game. Now, for those not familiar with wuxia, it's a style of martial arts fiction that's known for its larger-than-life heroes and spectacular action. Notable films would be The One-Armed Swordsman, Come Drink With Me, and A Touch of Zen, while newer films that audiences might be used to would be Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Detective D, and Hero, which is one of my favorite films in general. It's just simply beautiful, and I recommend it all the time. While it is set in historic times, the wuxia genre and the game itself is not about real history. It's an anachronistic, fantastical ancient China, and the genre, like the game, has no monsters or magic in it.
Oh yeah, there ain't nothing like wizards or spellcasters and nothing like that in this game. You know, any magic that you see, that's probably going to be trickery or maybe alchemy, which, you know, that's just science right there. That's not like a spellcaster, nothing like that, which, okay, yeah, there are magical items such as magic swords or instruments that can peel the flesh off of an enemy's bones, but, you know, that's different than somebody that be casting spells and all that fairy tale crap, you know, which, okay, yeah, I mean, this is a game where people can jump 20, 30 feet at a time, battling atop bamboo forests, running across the surface of a lake, maybe heating the skin up so hot that an enemy's weapon melts when it touches them, maybe sending shockwaves of force out of their fists so powerful they can smash stone. But, you know, that's not magic, that's just martial arts right there. Totally different.
One thing I have to praise about this game is it absolutely captures wuxia. I mean, we started watching a lot of wuxia movies and shows when we started playing it, you know, kind of getting in the mood and the spirit of what it was we were about to play. And time again, we were pointing to all the amazing things the characters could do or how the fights played out. And we were nodding and going, yeah, that's just like it is in the game. Now, not parts of the movie were like the game, but entire movies were like the game. So I am very, very impressed with how well they did this. Now, it is more of a skill-based system than a class-based one. There are levels and level improvements, and while characters might have various professions such as a scholar, merchant, priest, or farmer, those are not their character classes. Every character, if there was a class, is the same class, which is martial artist. And even at the lowest level of ability, level 1, they have abilities and powers that are far beyond normal people. It focuses on what's called the Jianghu, which is a term that pops up a lot in wuxia fiction. Jianghu is kind of like a criminal underworld, bandits, prostitutes, gamblers, and thieves, frequenting the inns and brothels and back alleys and tea houses. It's a complicated world that's outside the emperor's rule, yet right beneath his nose, and it's also the world of the martial artist. The game pushes the narrative of we're moving within this world and has all the characters where we have allies and enemies and all sorts of reputations and narratives going on within it. The game mechanics are very simple. In fact, the mechanic rules for skills and combat and all of that are all within the first 24 pages, which I absolutely love. And while the rules are very simple, I wouldn't exactly call this a rules-light game. It operates with dice pools, and the only uses d10s. So when you're attempting a skill roll or a combat action, you roll a number of d10s and you take the highest die result. And if that die number is above a target number, which is usually 6, the action is a success. Now, if the die result was a 10, it's called a total success, which means additional benefits might happen. Now, players also receive bonuses or penalties to the number of dice that they roll in their pool, so there's no math when you roll dice in this game where you're adding or subtracting modifiers to whatever the result is. If you have a bonus, you simply roll more d10s. If you roll a minus, you roll less d10s. All that matters is that one of those dice hits the target number or higher. Now, in the case of opposed skill rolls, such as arm wrestling, where both parties roll their dice pools as normal, the highest result is whoever the winner is.
Now, one criticism we got here is while that sounds all fine and good and everything, the rules don't say what we're supposed to do in the event of a tie, right? Like if I'm rolling against my opponent and my highest die roll is an 8 and their highest die roll is an 8, which one of us is supposed to win there? What do we do? So our suggestion here is to go ahead and check what the second highest die roll was in each of your pools, right? And that's the one that we go by. So if I rolled an 8, but my second highest was a 7, and they rolled an 8, but their second highest was a 4, that means the win went to me. Now, if in the improbable situation that both the first and the second tie, then just go down to the third, go down to the fourth, and keep going until one of you either has a higher die roll or one of you runs out of dice, in which case the win goes to the person that had the higher die pool. And in some unlikely event, which is now certainly guaranteed to happen because RPGs are nothing but unlikely die rolls, go ahead and re-roll if both of you have the same number of dice in your pool and both of you rolled all the exact same numbers. But I really would hold off on doing that until after your game master gets to describe to everybody what sort of epic craziness happened when two unstoppable forces came head to head.
Skills and abilities are ranked 1 through 3, meaning that's how many dice that you roll for your skill check. If you have a 0 rank in a skill, if you don't have anything at all, you can still attempt that skill. However, in those cases, you roll 2 dice and you use the lowest die number that came up. Character creation is pretty simple. Osprey offers us a sheet for free on their website, and it's 1 page and 1-sided. However, the paper coloring background is not the best for writing on with pencils, so they also offer us this black and white version, which is great, but I preferred the colored text with a splash of red at the top. I didn't want it just black and white, so I went ahead and made this one, which is simply the colored one, but without the colored background. And if anyone wants to use that version that I had made, I have a link down in the video description below if you'd like to download that. The first step in character creation is selecting your signature ability. Each character gets one of these at first level, and you're going to get more at higher levels. Well, you will get more at higher levels, and these are the amazing things that your character is known for, usually what their reputation is around. Now, maybe it's a combat ability like Ruthless Blade, or it could be a non-combat focus like Fading Smoke, where you're just kind of magically incredible at stealth.
There are a lot of signature abilities in this game. There's 140 of them, which, some of those are advanced abilities, meaning before you can do that awesome thing, you first got to learn how to do this awesome thing. So that way you kind of grow and evolve, and all of a sudden you unlock this other ability you get to do later on when you're higher level. But part of what makes character creation so difficult in this game is just going through all of these special abilities and figuring out which one of those cool things you want to do and kind of figuring out how you want your character to advance, if you want to do something cool later on, and really just deciding what powers and what ability it is that's going to define your character. That can take a while.
Once we've chosen whatever our signature ability is, the next thing we're going to choose is our special counter. These are like signature abilities, but for defense. Now, maybe you can deflect range attacks like arrows and darts with your robes, like Flying Snow does in Hero, or maybe you can block open hand attacks in a way that your opponent shatters the bones in their hand. There are 41 counters to choose from, and again, it can take a while for players to narrow it down to whichever is the cool one that they want to have when they start off the game. After that, the player applies points through their different skill pools. For each category, they have a different number of points that can be applied. So defense, which already begins with a 5 in each field, they get to apply 5 more points between all 3 fields. They can do this however they like, and this creates the target number that opponents need in order to hit them. With the 3 varieties of martial arts, they have 4 more points that they get to distribute.
Oh, and the lightness martial art? That's the one that lets you hop 20 feet per rank, letting you jump over high walls or skip across treetops with ease. It is the coolest and handiest thing in the entire freaking world, so my personal recommendation to you here is because you get 4 points that you can distribute among the 3 different types of martial arts, you need to be sticking at least one of those points into lightness, because why would you not want to be able to fly?
The rest of the skill categories each contain 5 skills, and players have 6 points to distribute among each category. And if any of the special abilities or counters that the players had chosen had skill prerequisites, they're going to need to apply their skill points to meet those requirements. We also get to choose our character's eccentricities, which are personality or physical quirks about them. They might have a mechanical effect, or they might just simply be for role-playing reasons, such as they can habitually laugh at inappropriate things. Now again, there are a lot of eccentricities to choose from, and they really do fit the genre here. So with both the heroes and the villains, they always have some sort of defining quirk about them, because once again, everyone in Wuxia is over the top. Character levels are ranked 1 through 9, each one granting more abilities and powers. But one interesting thing here is there are 3 ways to go about gaining levels. In short campaigns, they advanced 1 level per session or 1 level per adventure, but there's also suggested methods for 6-month campaigns or long-term campaigns where advancement is much slower. And I love that they just simply write in 3 separate ways based off of 3 different types of play styles that players might want just right out the gate that's just offered in the rulebook. Now once the player is done, they choose their occupation, fill in their backstory and some other details, but the final step in character creation is making a backup character. And it says you have the option that you can wait until your 2nd or 3rd session to do this, but I really don't recommend that you wait too long on this. Backup characters advance at the same rate as the primary character. So if the primary character dies or is incapacitated, the backup character just enters the game with some sort of grudge that's already against whoever killed their friend. And character death is very possible, which brings us to combat. Combat in Righteous Blood Ruthless Blades is a big damn deal. Even high-powered characters can be taken out in just a single round. Rounds consist of 3 phases. Now I also made a cheat sheet for this, so I'll go ahead and show that. The first phase is the talking and analysis phase. Now this is where we might stare each other down, or talk and roleplay, or assess one another, gaining bonuses to our attacks, or giving minuses to our opponents, or learning what the special abilities each of them have. Characters can easily determine not only what their opponent's level is, which is known as their killing aura, but how many people their opponent has killed, which is known as their killing aura darkness.
Which, by the way, yeah, that means that your players have to keep track of how many people their character has killed or participated in the killing of. And other martial artists, they can see that when they look at them, right? That darkness permeating their aura of all the lives that they've taken. Kind of like a murder hobo tanked.
Once the talking and analysis phase is complete, or if it was just simply bypassed because we were doing an ambush or somebody was enraged and they didn't want to talk, the next step is rolling initiative. You roll as many dice as your speed skill is, and you take the highest result. Now the rules say that we should re-roll tie breaks here, but that can be problematic once you've got 4 heroes and let's say 5 bad guys. We got 9 people in this combat and we're all rolling d10s and all hoping to have unique results. We're going to end up with a ton of ties. Now personally, I am not opposed to allies having just simultaneous actions, as long as their actions are not counteracting one another, where they're doing something where it really matters who actually went first. I have no problem with doing just simultaneous action because this is a fast and furious fight. But if you don't want to do simultaneous actions, you could just do what simply Jack suggested earlier with other opposed rolls, where if the highest die result was a tie, then we consult whatever the second one is, and then the third to see who goes first, rather than having other people re-roll, because it's kind of a bummer to start off your initiative round and you roll and these 2 people get a tie, so then they re-roll, and now one of them is now tied with this other person, and are we going to make them re-roll? And if we do, all of a sudden then they're both tying somebody else, and it just gets really long and really tedious, and it's just time consuming. The third phase is attacking and movement, and this can be devastating. Characters might be able to counter certain attacks, such as if my special counter applies to bladed weapons or an open hands. If that's what my opponent's using, then I might get to apply my counter here. If an attack hits, the player rolls damage, and if they roll above a target number, which is set by the target's hardiness stat, then you wound the character. And if you roll a total success of a 10, it gives 2 wounds. And depending on how well the attack roll hits, or certain other factors, certain weapon factors, or special abilities, it might give 3 or more wounds when you hit your opponent.
Now, to give you an idea what this means, is characters start off the game at first level only being able to take 3 wounds total. And upper level characters, the highest level character, they can only take 5 wounds before they're gone. Now, of course, at those upper levels, they're going to have a little bit of resistance, and they're going to be a little bit harder to hit than a low level character. But once somebody actually does manage to land a blow against them, whole fight could be over in just 1 to 2 hits.
Healing in the game is slow, and it can take weeks to recover from injuries. Once a character is dropped to 0, they begin dying. We also roll in the death and maiming tables. Now, these might mean that the character is quickly killed, but it could also mean that they've lost a limb, or they've gone blind, or they've received some sort of permanent injury that they're going to have after that. And at the end of the round, we just simply start over.
And if possible, every single round should be able to begin with the talking and analysis phase. Our heroes panting and bloodied and staring each other down and continuing a conversation, which is an absolute staple in the wuxia genre.
Personally, I love this combat system. It is brutal, but players and game masters should really get into describing the craziness whenever they're playing this game. Don't just simply say, oh, you're swinging your sword, but talk about how dust and leaves and water might blow away in some sort of slicing motion, even, 10 or 15 feet away because the sword is going that fast. Or, don't simply say how your weapon slices an enemy, but talk about just impossible gouts of blood that come spraying out of the wounds, or say how hard a punch hits somebody, it sends them flying back through, various objects like furniture or doors. If your opponent, they dodge a blow, don't just simply say that, the blow missed, but explain how it was that this incredible martial artist managed to miss the roll. Well, that's because their target, maybe they ran up a wall and did some sort of cartwheel in the air, and they flipped and they landed back down in front of them, because that's the only reason that attack could miss. So everything in combat should just be described as over-the-top awesomeness. Now, one complaint that I do have about the game is that we have a ton of weapons. We have pages and pages of them, and each has their own damage or special features, but there's no table that just summarizes all of this for us. We have to read walls of text. So I made a chart for this as a quick reference chart, mostly because, my players, they get to know what their 1 or 2 personal weapons do. They don't have any problem keeping track of that, but I, as the game master, with me and my arsenal of NPCs that have half a dozen different weapons in each adventure, a chart really does help keep all of this straight. Now, one important thing to remember is with special abilities, counters, and some of the more powerful, unique weapons, it is possible that you can get a powerful combination that just seems overpowered, and that is totally fine. So if you have a bad guy who has an amazing open-handed fighting ability, but they go up against a player character who's optimized in a way that open-handed strikes are going to be useless against this character, and you're worried that, well, now my bad guy is meaningless. Don't worry about it. That is part of the awesomeness of the game. Just embrace it. Again, this is part of the genre itself. In the one-armed swordsman, for example, the bad guy has learned his enemy's fighting style and has devised a maneuver and a special weapon that is now invincible for this fighting style. So we now have a pair of low-level goons that he sends in that takes out a ton of the good guy's friends, because their martial arts, while powerful, is completely helpless against this counter and weapon combination that the bad guy has devised. However, then our hero shows up, and because he's had to learn how to fight with his left hand instead of his right, he can now easily defeat these bad guys and save the day. So some of the combinations are going to be devastatingly powerful, maybe offensively, maybe defensively, maybe both. However, if all these combinations, they're going to have limitations. So the next person that character fights, or if that character that they're fighting that, was unable to get through their martial arts, if they flee, eventually they could return, and they might easily overcome it the next time using a different weapon or a different fighting style. Once again, this is how the genre is meant to be, so don't expect this game to always be perfectly balanced. It's not, and it shouldn't be perfectly balanced. Now, I do have a few criticisms of this game. First, outside of a suit of magical armor, there are no armor rules at all. Now, while wuxia heroes almost never wear armor themselves, soldiers or bad guys might wear armor, so I'd like to have some basic armor rules for non-martial arts characters who might be wearing that. And while there are no monsters in the game, and I completely get that, we only have a few animal stats here, but I would like to have had more. Bears, elephants, venomous snakes, even some fantastical varieties of those, not quite monsters, but more like super rare exotic animals, like the fire beetles that were in Detective D. Tiny complaint, I know, but this is a review video after all. Next, well, I've already brought up how there are so many special abilities and counters and special weapons rules. Well, that's not much of a problem for players who, they've got a small number that they have to keep track of. The character's only got 1 or 2 special abilities, and they know what they are, and they chose them. It is a different matter for game masters if they're trying to run large casts of characters, and each character has their own powers and abilities, and that can get really, really complicated to keep track of very quickly. Now, one thing about this book that is very cool is that it offers us a cast of NPCs, like a lot of NPCs. There are 70 NPC profiles in this book over the course of 60 pages. That's 1/5 of this book is just dedicated to NPC profiles, and they're all linked to one another, through various allies and rivals, and it is amazing and I love it. However, let's just take this NPC right here. She's 5th level, so middle of the road. We have 1 special weapon, 2 special abilities, and 2 counters. And that starts becoming a lot of details that the Game Master has to know and keep straight just for 1 character. And we might have half a dozen or more characters in a single adventure, all of them like this, but all unique in different ways. And that can pop up a lot, because others could pop up as random encounters at tea houses or on the road. And each of them has got 3 or 4 special abilities of their own or special rules, and that can really start dragging the game down unless the Game Master is very organized with their preparation. We don't want to be stopping the game, which should be fast-paced and action, so the Game Master can just pick up and flip through the book trying to search for all the details about the abilities that these characters have. Now, it's probably not a big deal for Game Masters who are used to games that just have a smorgasbord of powers and spells and feats and abilities, so to them this might just be old hat and they already know what they're doing. But again, as much as players might love having these special abilities and different things about their characters that are unique, it's not always the most easy to run those. The final criticism is a lack of support for this line. The game came out in 2020, it won Osprey their first ENnie award, but aside from a free supplement for naming your characters and additional free adventure that's on their website, there has been nothing else made for this game, and I would love to see a lot more materials and supplements and adventures that come out.
Seriously, Osprey, give us more of this game right here. We need a lot more of this.
Now, speaking of supplements, I have a cheat sheet that I made for a game that I gave to my players and I have on my Game Master screen, so link below if anybody wants that or any of the other stuff that I've made for it. So the burning question, is Righteous Blood Ruthless Blades worth it?
Abso-freaking-lutely. I mean, we weren't too sure about this game when Seth first pitched this to us because we were finishing off our Pulp Cthulhu campaign. He was all like, hey guys, you want to check out this Wuxia game when we're done? And we were like, okay, yeah, I guess we'll see what that's about. But then we had our first session. We made our characters, and we were pretty dang happy with these characters because they look pretty cool. But then we had our first combat, which is in this marketplace against a band of thugs, and holy crap, that was amazing! This game is badass!
We have had a lot of fun playing this game. We've played through the 2 available adventures that are out right now, Obsidian Bat and Pleasures of the Harbor, so I'll eventually get around to reviewing those, and I can show how I organize my NPCs and all their powers because both of those adventures have pretty big casts. Now, a couple tips that I want to offer for any game masters out there that want to start making their campaign. First, while the naming guide is extremely cool and I really do recommend it, once the players have come up with whatever their character name is, that's going to be their Chinese name, go ahead and have them come up with whatever their Jianghu name is. What their street name or their martial arts name is. This is the name that they're known for, such as Little Ox or Flying Leaf, and of course, that name can change over the course of their career, such as one of our characters when he started off, he was a bandit archer named Black Feather, but then an injury in our second adventure left him mute, so now he's known as Silent Feathers. So not only does that really fit the genre, but it's also really handy for those of us that might have a little bit of trouble, pronouncing all these Chinese words. Now, second, when we were beginning our campaign out, I knew we were going to have a random assortment of player characters, each with, wildly different special abilities and occupations. And I was kind of come up with a reason why, this collection of characters would all be together in the first place. So I decided that was because they were all hunting a common enemy. So I made a villain and I named him Bloody Hands. And I partially filled out a character sheet for the character of his level. But, then once the characters the players were all done making their characters, I asked them one at a time to tell me a story of what Bloody Hands had done to them, to cause them to join this quest for revenge that was going to be sending them all over ancient China. And then I gave each of them a small detail that they knew about their enemy, and after all that was done, I then went ahead and I fleshed out the rest of the villain based off of what those stories were that the players had told me. So that has worked really, really well for us. We're actually about to do the finale where they finally come across him. That's going to be the last part of this campaign, but I wanted to offer that as kind of an idea or something that game masters could try. You can pick up a copy of Righteous Blood Ruthless Blades on DriveThruRPG or on the Osprey website. If you are looking for a gritty game with over-the-top action that plays exactly like a Wuxia movie, I suggest checking it out.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to see some more of our stuff, such as game reviews or how-tos, just hit that subscribe button. Till next time, gamers, you have a great day. You know, one thing you didn't mention in your review is how much of this game is really focused on drinking. I mean, you know, every character, they got a drinking limit that's equal to their level. There's a bunch of rules and abilities and special powers that are all focused around the idea of drinking baijiu. So I figured, you know, I might as well pick up some baijiu, kind of see what that stuff is like. You ever have any? Yeah, okay, so I picked up 3 different types of baijiu, and what I can tell you is that all of them smell absolutely amazing. Like this stuff right here, this smells like green apple Jolly Rancher, right? The sour apple, exactly like it. The taste, low-grade kerosene mixed with turpentine. I mean, it really gets your attention. And my character, for my abilities to kick in, I gotta drink 5 of these caddies right here, and that's a commitment.